That hot topic of contention in any free to play game, the economy. The Marvel Snap economy is an, let's say, interesting thing. It's very different than the economy in basically any other digital card game I've ever touched. In any other digital card game I've ever played, I can show up, I can swipe my credit card as much as I'm able to, and I can acquire basically any card in the game just by spending money. In Marvel Snap, that's not possible. Whether you're free to play or someone spending money, you have to play a lot of Marvel Snap to progress your collection, and you have to play that Marvel Snap over an extended period of time. The actual fastest you can get collection complete in Marvel Snap, spending as much money as humanly possible, still takes well over a month, and that time period is only going to go up as more cards are added to the game. The current big piece of contention in the Marvel Snap economy is definitely centered around their card release model with their Series 4 and 5. For those not familiar, new cards coming into Marvel Snap outside of the Season Pass are added to this Series 5 grouping where the cards cost 6,000 collector tokens to purchase. Collector tokens are a resource that are incredibly scarce for players in the early and mid game who are still collecting Series 3 cards. However, once you progress into the Marvel Snap end game, where you have acquired every Series 3 card, the rate at which you acquire collector's tokens increases dramatically. You go from 1,000 collector tokens a month without spending any money to over 5,000 collector's tokens a month without spending any money. This means free to play players in this end game scenario are getting one out of every 3 or 4 new card releases without spending any money right away. The big problem with this release model is that because these new cards are only accessible to people who are in that end game scenario, it makes these new card releases fall flat and be uninteresting and not relevant to players that haven't hit that Series 3 complete state. This model is very different than basically any other digital card game I've ever played. Marvel Snap essentially wants players to focus on acquiring and collecting all of the pre existing cards in the game before they turn their focus and attention to the things that are being released in the latest time frame. This is backwards. In any other card game, the older cards fall away and are made irrelevant and aren't playable a lot of the times due to power creep, and you only focus on the new cards regardless of when you started. And Marvel Snap is taking a more collector's approach. They want players to be seeking out and acquiring all of the cards in the game that have already been there before focusing on the shiniest, newest thing that's dropping most recently. The other thing that's very different about Marvel Snap's economy from any other digital card game I've ever played is that cards get cheaper over time. When you're buying a card that's entered Series 5 for those 6,000 collector tokens, you're essentially paying an incredible premium to gain earlier access to this new shiny thing. You could wait until it downgrades after a couple of months to Series 4, where it costs 3,000 tokens, and you can wait a couple months again to when it becomes Series 3 and costs only 1,000 tokens. You're essentially paying a 5,000 token premium to gain access to this card right when it releases. In any other card game, the cards don't generally get cheaper over time. In fact, in paper card games, they often get more expensive. But even in digital card games, on something like Magic Arena, for example, if I wanted to play their historic or older formats with older cards, I have to pay the same price to acquire those older cards as the day that they released. In a way, this makes Marvel Snap card releases a lot like purchasing a game on a platform like Steam. You're paying a premium to get that game at its full price tag on the day that it releases, but if you wait a little while, it's inevitably going to go on sale and you'll get that same game at a cheaper price point just by being a little bit patient. How much cheaper do the cards end up getting over time if you're waiting for them? Well, a lot cheaper. I have almost every Series 4 and 5 card currently available on Marvel Snap, and I have all of those cards because I've been spending an incredible amount of money and time to acquire them almost as soon as all of them have been releasing. To date, I have spent just shy of 3,500 USD on Marvel Snap. That being said, players that started playing Marvel Snap in October and are completely free to play will have every card that I currently have today if they continue just playing and doing their daily missions by this summer, spending no money. So I've essentially paid this incredible amount of money for earlier access to this content that everybody else is eventually going to have for free without spending anything. The title of this video is Does the Marvel Snap Economy Work? And I honestly think the answer to that question is we don't really know yet. Not us as the community, and honestly, I don't even think Second Dinner knows yet, and they're probably in a wait and see kind of territory to see if things shake out in a reasonable time frame. They need to wait and see, are players happy spending the amounts of money like I've had to spend if they want to get all of the cards, and are players who are not spending money going to be content with the timelines that it takes them to get those cards for free by being patient. I think whether or not this release model is going to work is going to depend very heavily on if the Marvel Snap team can maintain good balance between these newly released cards and the existing cards in the game that more people have access to while they're completing that kind of mid-game progression on their way to becoming Series 3 complete. If cards like Shuri and Darkhawk are the norm for Series 5 card releases, then it's probably problematic and doesn't work. And honestly, we need faster attention for powerful cards like Shuri and Darkhawk when they're obviously a bit overtuned in the Series 5 card pool. But it's also important to acknowledge that most of the Series 4 and 5 cards that we've had so far are not Shuri and Darkhawk. Those are two standouts among a wide group of cards that include things like Orca and Helicarrier that are honestly probably kind of bad and could use a buff even. One thing that needs to play out before Second Dinner can likely make an informed decision on how to adjust the economy is seeing how players interact with the end game experience once they get there. A lot of players that started playing on the global release that are free to play or just purchasing the season pass will be hitting that end game scenario where they're season 3 complete over the course of the next couple of months, and seeing how those players exist inside of that 5,000 plus collectors tokens a month ecosystem in the game seems like a critical part of answering the question, does this economic system work? I think it's going to be interesting to see over the course of the next couple of months how sentiment surrounding Series 4 and 5 card releases could potentially shift as more players hit that end game scenario where they have regular access to more collector's tokens. To give a comparison, when Marvel Snap first released back in the middle of October, there were a lot of players that were looking for Series 1 and Series 2 focus content because those were the cards they had access to. They wanted to see decks with the cards that they themselves could play with. Fast forward to today in the middle of January, and the average Marvel Snap player consuming a lot of Marvel Snap content is no longer one of those beginner players. You enter Series 3 about 3 to 4 weeks into your Marvel Snap journey, and at that point, the possibilities open up. When I post content talking about Series 1 and Series 2 stuff today, it actually performs much worse than content focused on Series 3 cards because the audience for Marvel Snap has progressed to where they're at in their card collection process to a point where things focused on Series 1 and Series 2 are no longer as relevant because that's not where a majority of the heavily invested Marvel Snap players are currently at in their journey. While I'm certainly not defending the current Marvel Snap economy as being perfect, I definitely think we are in this transition period where we don't really know if it works or not yet. Similar to how players wanted Series 1 and Series 2 content when they first started, and they wanted Series 3 focused content now that they're in the mid game, I think once players start hitting that end game scenario over the course of the next couple of months, where they start getting regular collector's tokens and can actually engage with the Series 4 and 5 cards in a meaningful way, I think there is a chance that the current Marvel Snap economy could end up being reasonable. But I also just don't think we have enough data one way or another because there just aren't enough players in that end game scenario yet as Marvel Snap kind of goes through this growing pains of its early lifespan. What are your thoughts on the Marvel Snap economy in its current state? Do you think the system they're trying to implement, where players are supposed to care about all of the existing cards in the game before turning their attention to the latest, shiniest things, is one that can work? Or do you think Marvel Snap needs to change and become more like other card games where the latest releases are supposed to be the focus for all players? It is also worth noting that the folks at Second Dinner have acknowledged that it is somewhat problematic and feels bad for players to not be able to engage with these latest releases, and it sounds like they're going to be working to change that at some point in the future. How exactly? We don't know yet, but something's going to be coming down the pipeline for it. But given how release development timelines work, I'd also wager a lot of the existing Marvel Snap players are probably going to be into that end game state where they're Series 3 complete and getting more tokens before any changes like this can even be implemented. To answer the question that is the title of this video, does the Marvel Snap economy work? Unfortunately, we just don't know yet. It's going to be interesting to see how players end up feeling as this progression towards the end game plays out for them, and if the Second Dinner team can end up striking a reasonable balance between having cards that players are always working towards acquiring while also not making them feel frustrated that they don't have every latest release as soon as it happens. As always, if you learned something new from my video or you just enjoyed my rambling, snap that like button to help this content reach some more people at no cost to yourself. If you happen to be new here, thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Consider subscribing to the channel. I post Marvel Snap thoughts and tidbits like this, as well as deck highlights here 7 days a week. I'd love to see all of y'all back again real soon. We'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. Enjoy the rest of your day.